She was America's sweetheart, the girl with the golden curls, the first crush of North America cinema. Today on Journey Through Cinema, we are taking a look back at the second of the big three actors of the 1910s, with Mary Pickford in Poor Little Rich Girl. Born Gladys Marie Smith in Ontario, Canada, along with her acting siblings Lottie Pickford and Jack Pickford, they lived for a short time under their alcoholic father John Charles Smith until he abandoned his family and then promptly died of a blood clot in 1898. Her widowed mother, Charlotte Hennessy, would begin taking in boarders, including a man who served as a theatrical stage manager who convinced Gladys and Lottie to get into stage acting where they performed at the Toronto Princess Theatre. By the 1900s, theater had become the family enterprise as they toured the United States performing company plays. Unfortunately, this led to the family leading this impoverished life until 1906 when all three siblings landed supporting roles on Broadway in a play called Edmund Burke. Only a year later, Gladys landed a more significant role in a second play, The Warrens of Virginia, written by William C. DeMille, brother of legendary filmmaker Cecil B. DeMille, who also happened to be starring in the play. It was then that producer David Belasco suggested that Gladys take on a new stage name, Mary Pickford. Pickford would finally have her big break in front of the camera when D.W. Griffith tested her for the film Pippa Passes. She wouldn't get the role, but Griffith really recognized that Pickford had this innate understanding of film acting language, an art form more subtle and less stylized than the large, dramatized gestures on stage. And some may argue when looking back that old films still had this broader stage-like styling of acting, but you can see how the pioneers of the medium were starting to pick up and grasp the difference in acting styles. Pickford was signed with Griffith's company, Biograph Studios, playing both bit parts and leading roles, with her first film being Two Memories, in a very small supporting role. In 1909, she would star in 51 short films, almost one a week. Her first starring role would be in The Violin Makers of Cremona, where she would play a girl offered as a prize for whoever could create the best violin. As a result, one of the violin makers, assuming the other one has the better violin, switches his with the others in the hopes of getting the better one. The cheat ends up winning, but feeling guilty, he smashes the violin and admits that Pickford's lover is the real winner. Pickford instantly became popular with audiences, and although Griffith didn't yet credit actors, distributors began marketing her under the moniker The Girl with the Golden Curls, a name that stuck. Though she left Biograph in 1910, Pickford would continue collaborating with Griffith, introducing him to two of his biggest stars, Dorothea and Lillian Gish, who were both her neighbors at one point. She would try to return to her passion of Broadway, but found she was always being drawn back in front of the silver screen. In 1913, she finally decided to just pursue film exclusively, and paired with Adolf Zucker of Famous Players, which would later become Paramount Pictures. Zucker was a believer in leaving behind shorts and focusing on multi-act structures of longer plays, or even copying them outright. The birth of the feature film was here. The first feature starring Pickford was in The Bishop's Carriage from Edwin S. Porter. This is now a lost film, but it also adapted a stage play. It copied every line of dialogue, resulting in a stiff production. Pickford would later call this one of her worst productions she'd ever worked on, and she greatly disliked working with Porter in general. Despite this, by 1914, features were being produced en masse, and Pickford was one of the biggest stars, with Hearts Adrift and Tess of the Storm Country, also directed by Edwin S. Porter, launching her to an all-time high and making her one of the most popular actresses in America, if not the world. By 1916, she would only be surpassed by Charlie Chaplin in popularity. Chaplin and Pickford were the first two real movie superstars, soon to be joined by number 3, Douglas Fairbanks, who we actually covered in a past video, so be sure to check that one out. And this brings us to 1917 with Poor Little Rich Girl, a film that demonstrated the height of her popularity. 1917 was a big year of successes for Pickford, and although we don't know the highest grossing film of this year, Pickford had 3 movies that are all likely contenders: Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farms, Romance of the Redwoods, and Poor Little Rich Girl. All 3 movies are worth seeing, but in the end, Rich Girl is the one that I felt better showed off her talent for both drama and comedy, whereas Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farms is more of a standard issue rag to riches comedy, and Romance of the Redwoods is more of a sort of creepy Stockholm Syndrome, romantic drama. I may cover these 2 later, but we'll just kind of see how it goes. Poor Little Rich Girl, however, showcased a broader look at her skills as an actor, while also featuring her little girl character, who was known across many of her films. Poor Little Rich Girl is more of a dramedy, adapted from a 1913 play of the same name. It follows a 10-year-old girl named Gwen, and yeah, I know, it's kind of laughable that 26-year-old Mary Pickford is playing a 10-year-old. Her short stature, it It helps a little, but not by much. It's still a little silly and a holdover from stage where young women would play little girls or boys. Anyways, 10-year-old child Mary Pickford feels constrained by her rich life, abused at the hand of her caretakers, and neglected by her parents, and she wishes that she could have an ordinary childhood like the rest of the kids. Pickford is doing her most adorable routine possible as normal and does a good job of balancing the comedic childhood antics with the drama of child neglect. Here you see her skill set in working in the silent medium, with wide-eyed expressions of childhood innocence and a stiff-faced pout. Her own charisma keeps the character from being outright unlikable. On paper, Gwen should come off as kind of this pouting, whining, and generally self-centered little brat, especially in a scene where Gwen is showing very little sympathy to her father, who is working to provide for the family and ends up losing everything in a market crash. She is a little kid, so that lack of sympathy is, understandable, but it's sometimes forgettable when, the character's being played by an adult. All the same, Pickford's own charisma and raw likability keep you from wanting to bend this unruly child over your knee and paddle some manners into her like the good old days. The film is balancing the darker elements with lighthearted fun, like Gwen creating a nemesis out of another girl, Sally Mae, when she tosses all of her own clothes out the window to keep from having to just lend her a dress. Or scenes like where she disguises herself as a boy because, in the 1910s they thought any girl dressed as boys' clothes is instantly indistinguishable from a boy. So, sure. But she gets in a mud fight, which is fun, but then hosed down cruelly by her caretakers. Abuse, I guess not fun. And then destroys a bathroom and gleefully plays in the water in what is probably the most memorable and iconic imagery of the movie. And like I said, there are effective moments of drama with the abuse scenes. The best one, or I guess the worst one, is in a sequence where the caretakers kind of accidentally poison Gwen by giving her a double dose of medicine, inciting a series of overdose hallucinations. This is probably the strongest part of the movie that drew me to it more than the others. The Land of Happy Children sequence is well portrayed as somehow both lighthearted and kind of creepy. From the dancing phantom children to frolicking through the woods followed by this man with a vuvuzela, it's kind of a low-key mix of both Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland. On my watch-through, I at first thought it was supposed to be all happy-go-lucky, and I was confused by how creepy it was. I thought that maybe it was accidentally creepy in the same way as those Oz films we covered before. But in the end, it does seem to be kind of the point, as the Land of Happy Children becomes more and more of a dark place as we dive more into Gwen's inner psyche and fears. Unfortunately, this Wizard of Wonderland section really serves as only the final 20 minutes or so of the film and doesn't last as long as I would have liked it to. This, to me, should have been the main meat of the story instead of just the climax. But then again, to be fair, perhaps that would have made it hedge too close to those other two stories I mentioned. The end of the movie doesn't really require Gwen to kind of make her way back from the Land of Happy Children. She just sort of wakes up. The film tries to say that this was a unfortunate ideal and everyone sort of learned their lesson. The mother learned to let the child play outside in the mud like a normal kid. The father learned to, spend less time trying to make money all the time. Although I don't know if almost killing your child before learning your lesson is really the kind of happy ending that the writers seem to think it is. It still just makes me want to just call up child services and have the kid taken away somewhere safe. Overall, the film was pretty solid for the silent era, but like Wild and Woolly, which we've reviewed before, this was mostly successful in showing off the wide talents and the appeal of the main actor. Pickford brilliantly balances the comedic and the drama. She's cute when she needs to be, and although she can't completely suspend the disbelief of being a full-grown woman playing a child, she can keep you glued to her own personal magnetism and forget any flaws in conceptualization. It is worth it as an example of why audiences in the 1910 were drawn to her. And that's my review for Poor Little Rich Girl. Please like and subscribe, and we will see you back here for Journey Through Cinema 1917 in film, where we will be looking back at the entire year in film and also the king of the silent era, Charlie Chaplin. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you then. Keep those reels turning.